Danan ran against the crowd, his heart racing, eyes darting from one terrified face to the next while waving through the thick bodies. He pushed past to his door and stepped into his home. Relief washed over him when he saw that almost all the go-bags were already gone. His sisters and cousins, his mother and uncles, his grandmothers. There was just his and one other. Danan pulled on the straps, looking from the crowd rushing by his door to the last bag. Old Tashi's. He hadn't remembered a single time when she hadn't been home. He should be running, he had to run, to slip into the crowd and get to the escape shuttles, but his feet refused to move. His eyes wouldn't pull off the bag. "Stupid old woman!" he shouted. He grabbed her bag and darted out the door. The deranged myths of his childhood were going to get her killed. He charged through the crowd, their eyes flicking down at the second bag in his hand and glaring. He could explain if he had the time, if there was any bloody time. The station rocked with explosions, lights flickered, causing moments of darkness and screams. Sirens blared, loud enough to rumble his stomach. He tried not to think too hard about what he was stepping on. He flowed with the crowd into wider tunnels, out of the little residential streets of the station, into the major thoroughfares. He hit the widest and turned once more against the crowd. He stuck to the wall, gripping it for support, pushing through each of the veins that led into the major artery. The crowd thinned and soon he was out the other side, sprinting alone. He reached the colossal doors at the end of the hall and ran through. What little space they had in their home, everyone crammed into tiny shoeboxes, sharing everything, and yet they had wasted so much on this. The room was a silent, dimly lit bowl of cold, austere steel and simple step-like benches. The only light in the space was at its centre, a dim pale glow above a statue. The monument was dwarfed by the space, but still large in its own right, tall, sitting on a simple plinth with no text. Above it hung a foot-thick, slight dome of glass that revealed the shrouding nebula around their station. "Tashi!" shouted Danan. The old woman was hobbling toward the statue. The sounds of chaos behind him had whittled down to almost silence. All he could hear was the tock, tock, tock of her cane. He ran along to her side, reaching her as she reached the statue. "Tashi, it's time, we have to go," said Danan. She was old. His great something, but still. As others slowed, she was quick. "I'm not done yet," she would say, a laugh in the face of inevitability. "I've got your bag. If we're quick," Danan started to say, his eyes running over the old woman wrapped in rags and a hood. "It's been so very long. I want to see him again," she said. There was a scream behind Danan, and he glanced to see darkness at the end of the long tunnel. The lights had gone out for good, and he couldn't see the crowds pushing for the escape ships. The occasional straggler ran out, slowing to walk into the monument. They lingered by the door, eyes panicked. Danan flinched at a sharp sound and turned to see Tashi's cane on the floor. She walked forward on her own, head craning back, her hood falling away to reveal thin white hair the colour of snow. She stared up at the statue. It looked like an old propaganda piece, a suntan toddler held in the arm of an alien, looking forward toward the future, his face smeared in ash, holding her above the rubble. It was older than the station. It wasn't a statue of Geno, who found the shrouding nebula, or Bolin, who designed their home. It was an alien. "The humans aren't here," said Danan. His teeth met, his face pulling into a sneer to bite back. "They never were." Tashi reached into her robes and pulled out a simple iron rod with a black handle. She reached up, holding it toward the sky and gripping it tight. Tashi stretched up, as tall as he, lean ropey muscles like tight springs showing down her arm as her rose fell away. Danan looked up to see the little girl on the statue, holding the same rod in her hand. The ends of the rod began to glow red, growing brighter until they fizzled and popped out a shower of sparks. The rod clanged loudly to the ground, causing Danan to jump. a puff of smoke rising out of cracks down its length. It twisted and cracked with heat like an angry dying insect. One of the escape shuttles ran across the dome. As Danan watched, it was struck. It swelled from the inside and bloomed out in smoke and fire, and littering things that caught the light. He pulled away from the sight. Tashi stood, unfazed by the destruction, all of her focus on the rod, her hand shaking. She reached out toward it, but started to lose her balance. Danan put his hand around her side, letting her weight fall against him. "We need to go, Tashi. Nobody is coming for us. Nobody ever has." Her face snapped up to him. "The humans will come, Chirai. They will save us." "Chirai was my grandfather. He believed, we all did, but we grew up and now it's time to go," said Danan. Danan turned to see others facing his way, dozens of them standing in the Tomb of False Hope. There were smaller explosions in the station, drawing closer. "You should go, Chirai," said Tashi. She had grown heavy, like time had finally caught up with her, her face finally pulling away from the rod, eyes flicking to his. He hadn't seen her cry before. He might be running late. He remembered running home, tears in his eyes, running past his mother to hear about the brave humans who would stand up to bullies. He remembered feeling safe. Danan looked at the other Suntans. They were younger, probably still believing in myths. They huddled by the door, looking from the tunnel of smoke-filled darkness that occasionally flashed with explosions, then back to the comforting fairy tale. He let go of his own false hope. The shutters were gone, and he knew it. "Close the doors," called Danan. He swallowed the pain in his throat and put on a brave face. "We can buy him a little more time to arrive." Tashi's eyes met his. Her fear eased away a little. He turned away from the rumbling locks and looked up at the dome. He felt terror slowly gripping like thorns around his throat, but he swallowed against the pain and kept himself standing firm. "The humans will save us," he said. Timid footsteps came forward, the other stepping into the light at the room's center, eyes turned upward at the dome with quiet, unspoken hope.